Hello, my fellow YouTubers and health conscious people around the world. Today I'm going to talk about uncovering how we become diabetic and one of the most common diabetic metabolic syndrome and the path to remission with no medication. But before I go into the details, a word of disclaimer. The information I'll be sharing is strictly general information purpose only, and don't use this as a medical advice, and there is no patient-doctor relationship as a result. The use of the information shared is at user's own risk, and this information doesn't substitute any medical advice or diagnostics. So we know everything except ourselves. In today's world, we mastered incredible technologies, rockets that reach the moon, computers that think faster than humans, and artificial intelligence that can transform industries. Yet, most of us understand very little about our own human body, the system we live in every single day. Why is that? This talk is an effort to explore how our body truly works, how it fuels itself, how it heals, how the right nutrition can restore balance and health from within. So, I strongly believe in this. Our body is the best doctor and the food is the best medicine. What do I mean by this? Listen to your body, your best health indicator, basically. We must be mindful of how we feel after each meal. Do we feel energetic, focused, fatigued, sleepy? These signals reveal whether our food choice truly serve our bodies. Unfortunately, most of the doctors receive very little training in nutrition. Their approach often revolves around prescribing medication instead of addressing the root cause through lifestyle and diet. Medical system has been heavily influenced by the food and pharmaceutical industries, which prioritize profits over long-term health. Medications such as, statins, metformin, or even common painkillers, antibiotics may offer short-term relief, but often comes with numerous side effects in the long run. Ultimately, the responsibility rests on us to learn, to question, and to understand how our bodies respond. We live in a world overfilled with food options designed to tempt us, not to nourish or enrich us. Awareness of what we eat, how it makes us feel, how it shapes our health is our greatest form of protection. This is a quest from my side as well, because when I realized 2 years ago um, during my blood test, I got to know that I am at early stage of pre-diabetic, right? My A1C was 6.2. And that actually resulted in my quest to learn more about our body. And at that time, the doctor recommended me with a metformin, and he was also looking to give me insulin. So I kind of thought about it and read a lot about nutrition and how our body works. And that was my beginning into the quest to learn about our own body. And I healed myself with the nutrition. Within 6 weeks, I remission my diabetic, and I was 5.2 after 6 to 8 weeks. And everything I remission through the diet and lifestyle. And in this video, I plan to explain how I remission myself. And before that, I just want to go through some of the myths that we have learned over a period of time. So what we learned, dietary advice we were told to follow, right? One of the first myths was saturated fat and cholesterol is bad. In fact, all these myths are from a carbohydrate-centric view because that was the guidelines we were given. We eat more carbs, medium protein, eat less fat. So if you look from that angle, yeah, this makes sense. But is eating high carbs is healthy? I don't think so. So henceforth, I question all these myths. Saturated fat and cholesterol is bad, but in reality, they're really good. If you look at my cholesterol video, my previous video, I explained how cholesterol and saturated fat is so good for our cells. In fact, cholesterol is a precursor to all the major hormones like insulin, glucagon, testosterone, estrogen, estradiol, you name it. And saturated fat is built for the cell membranes, and phospholipids are all built, for the cells. And saturated fat is the most stable fat, and mono unsaturated and polyunsaturated actually are a little bit unstable. So it is good to have more saturated fat in diet. Um, and eating fat makes you fat. Again, I question this myth. In fact, if you follow this podcast, you will, at the end of the session, you'll realize eating fat doesn't make you fat, mainly because it is driven by the insulin, which you will learn more about in the next couple of minutes. Infamous food pyramid. This is the pyramid we were told to eat for the last 50, 60 years ago. This is the recommendation we were given: high carb, eat more carbs, medium protein, low fat. Well, since then, help me understand why we are becoming so obese, and we have all kinds of diseases, diabetes, heart attack, you name it, hypertension, polycystic ovarian syndrome, erectile dysfunction, right? Alzheimer's, dementia. These diseases have been increasing, they're not decreasing. So we have to question, hey, the food pyramid that was recommended, is it right for us or not, right? And we also learned breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I question this. Um, well, if you look at our human physiology, um, in the morning, as you wake up, body releases cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and along with the cortisol, adrenaline glands also react and release glucose in our body. So you will have enough energy, and as such, you don't need breakfast, right? So your body releases glucose into the blood, and that will supply energy for you in the morning. So as such, I don't think you need to have a breakfast until you feel hungry in the morning, which could be later around 10 or 11 a.m. So my suggestion is eat if you are hungry, but don't take this as a mandatory advice. And we also learned brain only needs glucose, which is wrong. Actually, brain works on two fuels, glucose and ketones. I'm going to talk more about ketones in my next video. Um, Glucose, to some extent, yes, but better energy and is actually ketones. Um, when the human beings are born, and one of the facts is that, interesting fact is that humans are the only mammals that are born chubby, and that is by design. So when the baby is born, the baby's fuel, and brains go real quickly. They're observing, and as a result, the brain needs to go quickly. And the fuel at that time is predominantly ketones. And that ketones comes from mother's milk. Mother's milk has a MCT, medium chain triglycerides. And baby also burns baby's own fat, and that's how the babies get ketones as the energy. They'll use glucose, but through the lactose that is available in the mother's milk. But majority the babies use ketones. And I'm not sure how we lost using ketones over a period of time. I think that is a topic for another session. And then the sixth myth is low-fat diets are heart healthy. In fact, why are we getting heart attacks in spite of following the low fat diets, right? Every product in the market, you see low fat this, low fat milk, low fat desserts, and you name it, right? Still we are having all kinds of diseases. So exercise alone can fix metabolism. Truly? Really? Well, no matter how much of exercise, a poor diet cannot be fixed by just exercise. Calories in, calories out is all that matters. This is another myth. Calories, carbohydrate calories are different from fat calories, or different from protein calories, which you will learn later in this session. It's all influenced by hormones. So in this equation, hormones is not taken care, but the human body works mostly on hormones. So not necessarily calories in, calories out. And with number nine, eat small meals frequently to boost metabolism. Again, this is a very, very bad advice. The reason being, eating small meals frequently to boost metabolism. What this means is every time you eat, let's say you're eating breakfast, a snack between the breakfast and lunch, and you eat lunch and then you eat a snack between the lunch and dinner, and then after dinner, again a snack. So let's say you're eating six times, snack between the snacks and the meals. All these causes insulin rise, and insulin is one of the hormones that actually keeps your blood glucose high and doesn't allow to burn your fat. So which we'll learn more. So basically, this advice is purely wrong. In fact, you should follow the opposite. That is, eat less number of meals, so that allows your body to recover and also allows it to burn fat, right? Another myth is reduce salt intake, else will increase blood pressure. Yes, I think if you're from a carbohydrate centric view, this makes sense. But taking high carbohydrates itself is not advisable. So what happens? Why this was recommended is, since most of us are on burning, glucose all along, following the food pyramid. Salt is basically sodium chloride. Salt gets attracted, water gets attracted to salt. So high salt means high blood pressure. And that is the reason why it was recommended to not take much salt. But in fact, if you if you follow the other way, that is eat high fat diet, salt is very important. And in that case, insulin reduces, you release water more frequently and salts more frequently. So henceforth, you have to take more salts. Eat less and exercise more to reduce weight. Well, again, this is a wrong advice. You cannot exercise out of your bad diet, period. No matter how much of exercise you do, if you keep eating high carb diets, you will not lose weight. And so my simple summary on all these myths is just follow the opposite by reducing the carbohydrates, increase the fats and the proteins, and you follow the opposite to this, you will have better metabolic results. So I'm going to go into my own blood test markers. My sister advised me to see, hey, you know what? How about I check my blood tests? It's been a while since I'm following a particular diet that helped me a lot. And with this, I'm going to show you my results, blood test results. So hemoglobin A1C, basically this is a 90-day, average glucose levels in the blood, because how they calculate is as the sugar molecules increase in the blood, they get attached to this hemoglobin protein. So this protein is what carries these glycated molecule, and if you test that, you'll know how much sugar you have been accumulating over a period of time. This is a 90-day average. So mine is 5.2. As I said, 2 years ago, um, I was borderline pre-diabetic, and with this remission that diet and lifestyle I'm following, I drastically reduced it to normal levels of hemoglobin A1C. And then vitamin D, this is again a good marker of health. I My value is 98. It's really good. In fact, 2 years ago it was below 20. And one of the reasons for this increase in my vitamin D is obviously lifestyle. I walk, and I get the when I walk in the sun, and also I am in a high cholesterol diet. And as you know, vitamin D, um, it needs cholesterol. When a sun rays falls on my skin, underneath the skin, the cholesterol gets translated to vitamin D over a period of time and goes into the liver. So that's how I increase my vitamin D levels. And then insulin. So this is my friendly advice to all my audience. In fact, instead of checking your fasting glucose, I recommend highly check your fasting insulin. That is a good marker. Actually, even at the age of 30 years, if you check your insulin, you will know if you are getting into insulin resistance or pre-diabetic at the early stage, rather than, you know, later in the stage, living with that, pre-diabetic stage, learning that your insulin is way high. It's too late. So insulin is a good marker to fasting insulin is a good marker to test, and mine is 4, and the recommended value is less than 16 millimoles per milliliter, micromoles per milliliter. And then the other marker to check is insulin resistance score. Mine is 9, and actually recommended value is less than 33. Is insulin sensitive. So I'm insulin sensitive in this case. And then one of the markers that is high, which I'm expecting, is the cholesterol. And because I'm in a high fat and high protein diet, so this is expected results. My LDL and the cholesterols are really high. And if the doctor sees this value, and I'm sure he's going to recommend me statins, which I'm not looking forward to. I feel that this high cholesterol is good for me because, as I mentioned, cholesterol is needed for so many cellular mechanisms in our body. I feel very good about these results. And here is the summary of my overall metabolic metrics. Basically, total cholesterol 250, elevated but not dangerous, because I learned so much about cholesterol and saturated fat. So I feel good about this. And then most importantly, the HDL cholesterol is 66 and my triglycerides is 55. This is a good marker because I'm in a low carb diet right now. So triglycerides to HDL is less than, less than 1, which is 0.8, which is a good, healthy, metabolic marker. Fasting insulin is 4, insulin resistance score is 9, HOMA-IR. So this is an interesting one. So if you want to know more about you're insulin resistant or not, you just calculate this. Basically, take the fasting insulin times the fasting glucose divided by 405. I repeat, fasting insulin value, fasting glucose value divided by 405. That should be less than 1. So mine says 90, the fasting glucose times 4. So 360 divided by 405, so that's 0.88. So I'm insulin sensitive in this case. And obviously that reflects in my blood pressure, which is normal, 120 over 80. So most importantly, if you want to check your own blood markers, the important things that you want to look for is triglycerides, HDL, um, cholesterol. I don't care much about it unless you go for advanced lipid markers. Then you should look for small dense LDL. That is more atherogenic, and you should check for that if your doctor recommends it. If you're able to get that small dense LDL, that'll be a good marker for you to check on it. And as I said, fasting insulin is very important. That is a good marker if you are, insulin sensitive or insulin resistant. All right, let's get back to the topic: how we become diabetic, right? But before I do that, let's talk about macronutrients and associated serum glucose and insulin impact. So, as you know, we have 3 macronutrients: carbs, proteins, and fats. As you can see in the slide, as you take more carbohydrates means more more blood glucose, and more insulin. So that insulin increases because that is your body's reaction, metabolic reaction to push the glucose energy into the cells. That is the reason insulin increases. So that means less glucose, less carbohydrates means less insulin, which is what you see with the proteins. Proteins doesn't impact much of an insulin. It does, but it is much less than carbohydrates, and fats is literally 0 to none. That's why it is recommended to have a high carb diet, high fat diet versus high carb diet if you are um, if you have metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance. The good diet to follow is a low low carb or a high fat diet. So here are the good two hormones that play as yin and yang of metabolism: insulin and glucagon. Insulin is one of the most active hormone in our body. It is a master hormone, I would say, that drives pretty much every cell, how it takes the energy, right? Insulin is a master hormone. It's a main metabolic hormone, also called anabolic hormone. Anabolic means storage hormone, while glucagon is a catabolic hormone. So insulin plays an active role when you are fed state, like when you eat any food. Insulin plays an active role because its role is to push the energy into the cells and store the excess energy as a storage mechanism. Like glucose will be stored as glycogen, fat will be stored as a triglycerides, and amino acids not necessarily they are stored, but it causes protein synthesis. While glucagon is active in a fasting state, fasting is when you're not eating. Glucagon is very active because your body needs energy while you are inactive. Mostly your brain is functional 24 by 7, 365 days. It needs energy. So when you're sleeping, so technically you're fasting at the time, how does the brain get energy? It's a glucagon, right? It burns it oxidizes the fatty acids like triglycerides and supplies the glucose that brain needs. So in this slide, what I'm trying to show you is how our body functions in a normal, healthy human being, right? Pancreas has a beta and alpha cells that manage the release of insulin and glucagon. So insulin, as I said, is active in the fed state, and glucagon is active in a fasting state. And insulin is represented in a blue arrows, as you can see in this slide, and glucagon is represented in a red. So in a fed state, let's say you have a meal, and obviously the meal has like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So as you can see, in the bloodstream, you have glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids, that are converted into a smaller molecule. Now, your liver needs to manage this glucose that you just ate, right? So the insulin plays a key role as the glucose level increases in the blood. Pancreas reacts to it and releases the insulin beta cells. Now, what insulin does is basically it makes use of glucose as an energy by pushing into the liver and and into the other cells, muscle cells, and you can generate energy like ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is a currency, energy currency of human being is the ATP. So that's how you get energy. Now, excess glucose, as you can see in the liver, converts to glycogen. Glycogen is a storage form of glucose. We call it glycogenesis. That is the formation of new glycogen or stored energy. And when the insulin is high, you will not see glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. These play more in the glyco glucagon glucagon hormone in the fasting state. So in the fed state, which we are in right now, it's mostly glycogenesis. Means the some of the glucose is used for energy, and the excess glucose is stored as uh, glu glycogenesis. Sorry, glycogen as part of the glycogenesis, right? Now, let's go to the muscles. So we just looked at the liver, um, and also one of the things that I forgot to mention here in the liver, with the excess glucose, it it forms a fatty acids, triglycerides through de novo lipogenesis. It's called lipogenesis, formation of new fatty acids with the excess glucose. So while some of the glucose is used as energy through ATP, and excess glucose is stored as glycogen. In excess of glycogen, liver also converts the glycogen into glucose into triglycerides, fats through de novo lipogenesis. So that all happens in the liver. Now, in the muscles, as you can see, obviously the glucose is the main source of energy. With the influence of insulin, glycolysis happens, you get energy, ATP, right? And also amino acid synthesis, which is called protein synthesis, happens. That is, storage of amino acids in the muscles, right? And in the with the and when you are fasting, glucagon is more active, and then that triggers proteolysis, that is breakdown of muscles. I think let me go through the insulin first, and then we can go through glucagon. So I'm right now I'm talking about the fed state. This is all in the fed state. We talked about liver. We talked about the muscle. What happens in the muscle? Basically, you get energy, and excess energy is stored as fat also, and the amino acids are converted to amino acids triggers protein synthesis. Now, in the adipose tissue, which is the subcutaneous fat, basically under the influence of insulin, fat is formed called lipogenesis, formation of new lipids are stored in the adipose tissue, that is in your tummy. So this is what happens. In summary, insulin is a storage hormone. Or what you're seeing is the energy is getting either used as an energy or stored as an energy, like in glycogen in liver, and also glycogen in the muscle, and also use the glucose as an energy, as an ATP. Amino acids are trigger a protein synthesis, and in adipose tissue in your fat, basically new fat is formed and stored. Right. This is what happens in a fed state. This is all under the influence of insulin. So that's why insulin is called anabolic hormone and a storage hormone. Glucagon. Glucagon is triggered when you're fasting. How are you getting energy when you're fasting, right? That is thanks to glucagon. This is the hormone that gets triggered by pancreas when there is no blood sugar in your blood, glucagon triggers. And glucagon's role is to supply energy to your body while you're fasting. So the red ink arrows are all triggered by the glucagon hormone. So what happens? It's breakdown in the liver. Breaks down the glycogen. You remember, glycogen is stored under the influence of insulin. Now, when the blood sugar is low, insulin is low, that actually triggers glucagon. Glucagon, what it does is, since your body needs energy, it breaks down the glycogen through glycogenolysis, right? That's how you get new glucose, by breaking down the storage glycogen. And then triglycerides are broken down, basically say fatty acids. Triglycerides are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol. So glycerol is a glucose molecule, and glycogen is used to supply the glucose through that process as well. And in the muscles, using under the influence of glucagon, proteolysis happens. That means if you're out of carbohydrates and fatty acids, body will tap into muscles. Usually, body doesn't tap into muscles quickly. It will only tap into muscles under the extreme conditions, because body maintains your muscles intact, because that is needed for our human function. So it doesn't touch the muscles rather quickly. Only after it depletes the glucose and to some extent fat, then it will break down the muscles. That is called proteolysis, and the body has a ways to generate glucose through gluconeogenesis to form new glucose, breaking down the proteins. So that's what happens in the muscles. Now, in the adipose tissue, obviously, as we have seen, under the influence of glucagon, body can make glucose by breaking down the triglycerides to fatty acids and glycerol. And glycerol use for the glucose energy. So this is the classic examples or the classic form of how insulin and glucagon works in our body. This is purely a metabolism 101 in action. So in a healthy metabolism, which is also, I would tag this as insulin sensitivity. What happens in a person with healthy metabolism? Basically, what is metabolism? Metabolism is a function or a process where the energy gets delivered by the intake of oxygen and nutrition. Your cells, your mitochondria makes energy called ATP, right? So, and then body goes through anabolism also. While it generates energy, it also stores the energy in by way of glycogen, which we learned, which we saw earlier, and triglycerides in case of fats, right? And protein synthesis in case of amino, in case of proteins, right? So this is anabolism. Now catabolism is breaking down, the reverse process, and this is needed when you're fasting. When you're fasting, you need energy, so it breaks down whatever is stored. It's reverse happens. Basically, glycogen is broken down, and then you get glucose. Fatty acids are broken down, you get glycerol, and proteins are broken down to get to make new glucose. So that is a classic examples of anabolism and catabolism. As you can see at the bottom, under the influence of insulin, glucose is uptaken in the liver and muscles. Basically, what happens is glucose acts as a each of these cells in the organs, they have insulin receptors. Insulin receptor acts like a lock, and then insulin is a key. So when the insulin comes and goes into the insulin receptors, that allows the GLUT4 transport to open in the cell, and that GLUT4 channel is mainly for uptake of glucose into the cell as an energy. Same thing happens for the fats, triglycerides. Under the influence of insulin, fatty acid goes into the body cells. This is what happens in a healthy metabolism. Your cells are consuming energy. You have energy. You feel very energetic, less lethargic. You're more motivated. This is the classic example of insulin sensitivity. Now, what is insulin resistance? This is the main topic of today. And if you want to learn how diabetes happens, this is the insulin resistance is the root cause of it, and this happens early in the stage of your life, right? Insulin resistance occurs when your body cells doesn't respond to insulin as it should. So in the previous slide, we have seen how the body cells respond, to the under the influence of insulin. They take energy, and you get energy, ATP. But over a period of excess carbohydrates intake, right? Liver converts excess glucose to triglycerides via de novo lipogenesis, and liver exports these lipids to all tissues in our body, including adipose tissue. So in case of insulin resistance, the first body organ that gets resistant to the insulin is the adipose tissue, which is the fat on the subcutaneous fat. And so this is over a period of 10 to 15 to 20 years, right? This is not it doesn't happen overnight. With the excess carbohydrates that we all are eating a lot of carbohydrates in the last several years, right? Following the food pyramid diet. Obviously, majority of them will have insulin resistance at one stage or the other in their lifetime, right? And the reason being, because of the excess carbohydrates, you know, there is a lot of demand for production of insulin. So why the insulin resistance happens? Because excess of anything will cause resistance to that. That is a common fact. Let's say if you are used to hearing more loud noise, over a period of time you get used to it. Same thing happens to these organs, right? They get flooded with so much of insulin, they just give up. means they're not able to take the insulin. With the excess insulin, it is not able to move the energy into the cells as it used to be when the insulin was low. As the insulin increase, as the glucose increases, insulin increases, and these um, receptors on the cells, insulin receptors, will not function properly over a period of time with the excess insulin flooded. As a result, it becomes clogged in a way, right? The easiest way for me to say is that key that is used to open up the GLUT4 channel becomes clogged with the excess fat. As I mentioned earlier, with excess glucose, fat forms, and that actually clogs the cells in case of adipose tissue. And sometimes what happens is the every person has a personal fat threshold. What that means is everybody is different, and as I mentioned, every person has a personal fat threshold, and they could reach that with 10 kgs, and some can reach at 15 kgs, some others can reach 20 kgs, right? Everybody's different. Let's say if you reach your personal fat threshold, it means you become hypertrophic, right? The As a result, it generates ectopic fat. That means the fat cell has become grown enough, it cannot grow anymore, right? And sometimes it bursts and creates ceramides, cytokines, and that's really dangerous, right? That's what happens with the excess fat. Why excess fat obesity is bad is that it creates inflammation because the fat cells break and the ectopic fat happens. The ectopic fat is excess fat. Now, with the adipose tissue becoming insulin resistant, now that excess fat goes into muscle, right? Fat needs to go somewhere. It has to deposit someplace because you're eating so much of carb. Liver is converting all that sugar into fat. With the adipose tissue become insulin resistant, that means they're not able to take enough fat. Now the muscles take the excess fat and they become insulin resistant. Likewise, the liver become insulin resistant. When liver become insulin resistant, becomes the fat gets stored in the liver, becomes fat, non-alcoholic fatty liver. This is a very common disease nowadays. We are seeing even in the children, as early as 10 to 15 years, they become non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because they're drinking a lot of these sugary drinks and high fructose corn syrup, and also have seen some doctors eating fruits all day, and that also causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that results in diabetes over a period of time. So now with liver becoming a fatty liver, liver function reduces, means it will not function the same way as it used to be. Now instead of regulating the sugar, now it pushes more sugar in the blood because its function is kind of damaged with excess fat in it. Now, with this excess sugar in the blood, you have excess fat in the blood as well. It is exporting a lot of VLDLs. Now, your pancreas is the next organ that gets damaged with this excess fat. So, you have adipose tissue, your muscle, liver, and pancreas get, fatty pancreas. With the fatty pancreas, pancreas function is to mainly release beta cells and alpha cells, insulin and glucagon. Now, pancreas will not be able to generate the same level of insulin as it used to be. So now pancreas become dysfunctional, and this is a metabolic mayhem, right? So, and eventually your brain also becomes insulin resistance because of the same, function as I just mentioned. Excess insulin causes that cell to not uptake the energy. As a result, the brain cells don't have enough energy. You have a lot of energy, a lot of sugar in the blood, but they're not able to take it because insulin is not effective. As a result, you get Alzheimer's and dementia. So, insulin resistance in the heart will cause heart attack. Insulin resistance in your kidney cause kidney diseases. Insulin resistance in your capillaries, mostly in the retina, near retina, it causes your blindness. And insulin resistance in the brain is the root of the Alzheimer's. Parkinson's dementia. So here is basically the big elephant in the room is actually insulin resistance. Every doctor and is after sugar, but actually insulin resistance is the root of the issue. How can we get ahead of it, right? I learned that if you can learn how your insulin is working at a very early age in your life, you have a better indication of where you're getting to, right? Are you tending towards pre-diabetic? Are you tending towards insulin resistance? You will know that early in a stage, right? What used to take 1 spoon of insulin to dispose all your blood sugar will take 5 spoons of insulin to dispose the same 1 spoon of sugar. And eventually, when you reach age 40, you may need 20 spoons of insulin to dispose 1 spoon of sugar. This is a classic tendency of becoming insulin resistant, right? Your mitochondria and the cells are getting damaged with this excess sugar. As a result, they are just basically not able to take enough uh, energy with the influence of insulin. In this figure, as you can see, as insulin is the same quantity, but your energy is not able to uptake because of the insulin receptors getting damaged with excess fat in them. This is a great slide. I try to explain how this happens, as we age, right? Insulin resistance um, starts with insulin sensitivity. Depending on your lifestyle, it could happen even at the age of 20. Nowadays, kids as young as 15 to 20 years also getting insulin resistant, right? Because of the all the carbohydrates, processed foods that they're taking has a high fructose corn syrup on it, all kinds of bad sugars and seed oils, and that are making them insulin resistant at a very early age. But let's go through this. So in a normal age between, when you're active and your body is very metabolically healthy, you're insulin sensitive, right? That's between 0 to 30. Now as you age, as you're eating more carbohydrates, your cells are resisting the insulin, because as you're eating more carbs, insulin increases to a certain extent, as you can see in the curve. As glucose increases, at some point your cells give up, right? I can't take this energy, and your pancreas get damaged, as I explained earlier. As a result, pancreas are not able to produce enough insulin to dispose the glucose in blood. This is a classic example when you need more insulin, your body is not able to generate enough insulin. That is the where the shift happens to become more diabetic, because you have a lot of sugar in your blood, but your insulin is not able to dispose that into the cells. As you can see in the picture, your blood cells has your blood has a lot of sugar in it. That is a classic example of diabetics. How you become a diabetic, right? You're you're eating more carbohydrates, and then your body is generating more insulin. At some point, it gives up on taking the energy because of the excess insulin, and becomes insulin resistant. As a result, excess sugar is in your blood. And this diabetic is a root cause of a lot of other diseases. Not it won't The body won't stop at diabetes, because this is the stage where you will start generating plaques in your arteries, and eventually it will lead to heart attack, and then blood clots, and you know and then brain blood clot can happen. It can block your blood flow into the um, brain, and then you get brain hemorrhage. Types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, basically this happens in an early age. Your own autoimmune disease, where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks and destroys the insulin production, producing beta cells in the pancreas, resulting in lack of insulin. So diabetics 1 is they won't have any insulin. As a result, they lose a lot of weight. As I said, insulin is a storage hormone. Lack of insulin, they lose weight, and as a result, they need to take exogenous insulin every day. It's very painful, but that's a reality. Type 2 diabetes is a metabolic disorder caused by excess circulating energy and reduced physical activity, leading to chronic high insulin levels and insulin resistance. I think in the past couple of slides explains how we get into this. And type 3 diabetes, also known as Alzheimer's or dementia disease, is caused by insulin resistance in brain cells, resulting in a lack of uptake of energy and glucose, which eventually lead to cell damage and memory loss. So type 3 diabetes is mainly a brain disease. This is how we lose memory as you age, and this is very serious. So bottom line, insulin resistance is a big elephant in the room. Instead of sugar, focus on insulin, right? Focus on insulin and insulin resistance. As I mentioned, how do you measure insulin? So let me give you some hints on how to check if you are insulin resistant. These are early signs, right? If you have a black like markers uh, folding your skin at the neck or armpits where the skin touches, typically if you are insulin resistant, you will see like a black colored markers. This is called acanthosis nigricans. That is the initial sign of insulin resistance. And also you have skin tags, these fatty skin forms in the armpits. That is also sign of insulin resistance. So obviously, as I recommended, check your insulin levels, fasting insulin levels. That gives you more appropriate indication if you are insulin resistant or getting closer to diabetes, right? Instead of checking sugars, sugar doesn't tell much, right? Okay, you'll have a sugar levels of, let's say, 5.6 or 5.7, but the thing is, you are already getting there. But if you check your fasting insulin at a very, very early age, you know the trend, whether you're getting to the insulin resistance and eventually to diabetes, then you can actually fix it in earlier stage before you get to diabetic stage. So bottom line is insulin resistance is caused by excess carbohydrates intake. Genetics also plays a role. Basically, genetics loads the gun and your lifestyle triggers the gun, right? So you can fix it, even though you may have bad genetics, but you can fix by your lifestyle. And excessive weight. All these are root cause of polycystic ovarian syndrome, erectile dysfunction, low HDL, heart attack, Alzheimer's, dementia, you name it. This is the root of all the evils is the insulin resistance. Now, how do we remission this, right? So this is what I followed. I completely get rid of diabetes, pre-diabetic stage, to the point that I'm very metabolically healthy. I always check for fasting insulin um, at an early age, should be less than 5. In a healthy metabolic person, their fasting insulin level should be less than 5 or 5. You have to exercise. There is no other way because you're taking energy, but if you're not doing enough exercise, in fact, I'll tell you a trick. When you do exercise, when you're active, your body doesn't need insulin to uptake energy. So you're reducing the burden on insulin, on burden on pancreas. So exercise is a cheap way to get your energy into the muscles, right? All your body tissues. So do both. Hit exercise twice a week at least, and walk 10,000 steps every day. They're different. People think, oh, you know what, I can just walk and done with it. No, actually, there are two metabolically different aspects happens in terms of hit exercise, high intensity interval training. Your body burns more glucose, right? When you walk, your body is not going to burn the glycogen. It will burn your fat, right? You lose fat, but your body also stores a small amount of energy, like 100 grams in liver. It stores as glycogen, up to 400 to 500 grams in muscles as glycogen. So in order to get rid of this glycogen, you have to do the high intensity exercise. That's the only way you can get rid of this glycogen, excess glycogen in your body. So you take it by doing more exercise and you refill by eating. So this is how the metabolism works. If you keep on taking it, that means if you're not doing exercise, your glycogen is stored in your liver and muscles. Any excess glucose, guess what happens? The storage tanks are full and excess glucose comes into the blood. That's how you become insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome happens. So exercise is a must. Avoid excessive carbohydrates, processed food, and seed oils. This I think you learned enough now by now. Eat whole foods. This is that is naturally available versus boxes and bags with barcodes. You got to eat whole foods, right? Avoid all these processed foods because that's where all your junk is. Eat 2 to 3 meals a day, no stacking in between. This is more important because diet is the diet plays 80 to 90% role in your reducing your all your syndromes, metabolic syndromes. Period. After that is exercise and sleep and mental basically meditation, but diet plays a key role. Drink at least 2 to 3 liters water every day. The reason being, between the meals you have to drink water. That's how you hydrate your cells. When you hydrate your cells, the cells become more energetic. You have the sodium potassium pumps in the cells that are more active, and they send the signals. The signaling is between the cells is very important. That energizes these cells. So drink more water between the meals. Don't eat right after the meals because that will dilute your hydrochloric acid. Sleep for at least 7 to 8 hours. This is your body's way to recover. When you do exercise, and body won't recover immediately. Only body recovers when you sleep. If you don't sleep, you're not giving time for your body to recover, right? Avoid stress by doing mindful and meditations exercises, because this is very important. Stress also increases sugar because stress induces cortisol and adrenaline, which increases sugar in your body. The stress is a chronic disease which is very dangerous. Stress is another way that you can become diabetic, not only by diet but also the stress. And lastly, follow ketogenic diet. Why a ketogenic diet is a ketogenic is a low carb diet. As you can see, less number of carbs means less number of insulin, right? Low insulin means your body burns fat, right? When your insulin is high, your body will only burn carbs, and it won't let you burn fats. So the best way to lose fat is to by reducing the carbohydrates. That means low insulin. Your glucagon goes up, which oxidizes your fats in your adipose tissue. That's how you lose weight. And also, low insulin means less water, means you have to take more salts, which is very important. Less water means low blood pressure. All your body arteries, function normally. So your goal should be, how can you reduce the insulin with your diet? The best way to do that is by following the ketogenic diet, by low carb diet, by following high fat, medium protein, low carb diet. Folks, I hope you learned enough in this session. If you have any questions, comments, put in the YouTube comments. Also, please like and subscribe my channel, Healthtainment, and I'll see you in the next session on a ketogenic topic. Thank you all. Bye.